As you recall, forthcoming audience, the Pixies are the dobbies of this this book. A lot of labor. You do a lot of labor. Alright, here we go.
Harry Potter and the Throbbing Wands of Emotionality. Chapter 6, Pixie Dust Anonymous. Harry Potter sat on comfortably in his rigid, cheap plastic cafeteria chair, some relic of a public education system in Muggledom. But this is the wizarding world, and even the mundane demons of substance addiction are wildly more complex than their Muggle counterpart. Fentanyl, hold pixie dust beer, but don't drink it. Paul's substance uses a recipe for catastrophe, maybe death, but more importantly, catastrophe. It was Harry's first visit to a Pixie Dust Anonymous. Amazing that there is such a wild variety of folks from across the wizarding world who have gathered together to process their intersections with pixie dust. Parents, teens, educators, healers, artists, bards, and even the occasional Nundu, eager to participate in a recovery experience. It was at times equal parts ridiculous and heartwarming, but most importantly, it was working. After listening to a brief lecture and experiencing a magical healing ritual, a wave of guilt hit him. His binges were out of control, and his lack of control over his magic was endangering everyone and everything he loved. Desperately, he gazed at the two main speakers, an order of retired wizards and witches, united to discuss their personal experiences with pixie dust. You don't have to feel so alone. There are people out there who can help you. Reach out, trust us. We can help you start to break through that haze and get back to being the wizard we know you can be, said the first speaker, her voice trembling with emotion. She began to cry softly, but it didn't stop him from drinking the stuff. It didn't matter where he was or what he was doing. When the pixie dust began to flow, his internal universe expanded, and he found himself enmeshed in the gossamer spider webs of multiple selves. That was a constant. He was always seeking something, a distant star he could never quite grasp. Sure, there were magical creatures and human subspecies like goblins and centaurs, but no one in the wizarding community dared risk anger in the winged-veiled fumes who guard their crystal-clear waters from any intrusion. Yet, no one had bothered to do a study on the human capacity for resisting pixie dust. You ever wonder why? A sparkly cigarette lights up, and the entity in the haggard clothing, who had apparently been sitting next to him this whole time, offered further questions. You ever wonder why no mention of pixie dust at Hogwarts, even though a whole class of workers made the kids' food? Perhaps some people's fancy, new wands, and lack of taxes depend on a wizard's not knowing. The clothing was filled out as though a humanoid was wearing them, but the glow from the sleeves and leg cuffs caused Harry to invade the entity's personal space and look down the also glowing neckhole. Where the heart should be was a pixie leaning against the fabric and letting the pixie hang from their lips. What's going on? Harry asked, the most neutral way possible. The pixie stubbed the cig out into the floating undies that no one saw. Why did the pixie go to the trouble of enchanting the undies if no one was going to see it? Meet me outside after the meeting and I'll tell you. When the pixie snoozed and Harry slipped into the back corner to do his business, he crept out a back door and stepped onto a glowing silver staircase that went from the top of the room to the bottom. On each level of the room, about 20 doors of metal trimmed in gold magically projected a waterfall of colors that changed with the rise of the different entities inhabiting them. It was both a science fiction and mystical event. Suddenly, a green glowing pixie in a rainbow colored vest floated up next to him and introduced themselves as Carlicle. They shuffled past the flowing waterfalls of colors and led him to a door decorated with a small garden scene in stained glass. Inside the door was a room set up with dozens of recliners, like a mini theater, with each chair filled with a manatee, the largest manatee swimming toward the ceiling, leaving their legs dangling over the arm of
Why
the
is there
recliner.
manatees?
Harry followed them as they slipped into a small hole in the floor, just large enough to fit their small bodies. He never really wanted to be rude and point it out, but the neon glowing pixies came in all kinds of strange shapes and sizes. What is it about being unique and individual that seems to evade these little guys? One giant light bulb of a pixie appeared next to him and explained, "Listen, you're probably wondering why all these weirdos are here when you would think it's just humans for ages. Just know that pixie dust is not created by fairy dust or leprechaun potions. It's purely alchemical and is used in large industries, especially candy and pie industries. However, with constant eating and cooking, some part is inevitably seeping out, and that's where we come in." They giggled and twinkled in the air as the lights turned on, one bulb per floating pixie, and their laughter bounced off the ceilings. "We believe our job is important. Imagine what we must face, trying to lure huffing adults without any shame towards their addictions. This is our highest calling, being in this delicate, secret war against dangerous technology. What do you have to offer?" He stammered in confusion and was taken aback by their sudden change in tone. "I am part of an entity committee who works in Muggledom, monitoring the presence of magical creatures. I've not been using pixie dust, although I've been guilty of magical food and potions. Also, it's not much of an anti-addiction movement if the speakers all came out using the drug." The tiny bubblegum woman with a pixie sig flicked its glow onto his uniform sleeve and wrinkled her nose. "Harry, my partner, the one talking to you now, has been doing their research into illegal pixie dust traders who purposely are luring people with pixie dust. Although we have thousands of loyal addicts who buy pixie dust directly from the dwarves, some want only bad attention for our work and culture. Therefore, we are not promoting addiction, but stopping it. Addiction is a very potent magic word, one that has imprisoned people in chains of their own making. But have you ever pondered the air you breathe? The very air without which you would not survive 10 minutes. We don't call this addiction. And yet we don't call those every flavor beans drugs. Have you seen a bean head, Harry? It's sad. A prisoner of the tiny handful of flavors, unique to each person, that soothes the soul, encases one in the safety of their past or the hopes of their future. But rarely do those flavors come again. Their pining for them makes them run away. Instead, they get toe jam or Smith marshmallow. How would you like to be trapped in a pitiful existence with only the most putrid flavors to pass the time? A prison of one's own making," said a pixie, working on a bench, funneling pixie dust into its slender packages. The pixies intone. "A prison of one's own making. And this bench represents our addiction to selling the drug to others." The
Addiction
benches
commerce.
howled in unison. "Aloha Ashka, Abidishke." More random sounds came from the beans while Harry Potter was
They have a
mesmerized by
language,
the
it's their
insanely
culture.
beautiful magic of it all. Then they realized they had gotten stuck in a sort of time-warped energy bubble that lasted for weeks, which always felt like a quick minute. However, time still did pass outside, and during that time, Harry gained immeasurable knowledge about the hidden history of pixie dust and its interaction with the wizarding world. Moreover, his inner pixie Yuna emerged from inside him, and the two celebrated a life without consuming pixie dust. Somehow, they felt invincible and protected by the power of their unity, through positive reinforcement and genuine affection.
They need to bump it every few hours or so.
Ticket, he waved it, saying, "Have you had one of these bad boys? It reminds me of the good old days before dwarfs discovered you could put them in bars." Yuna chuckled and whispered in his ear, "You have got to be kidding me." One of them again. "And besides, with the way you can't hold your liquor, you better not share with them anymore." Yuna faded back into the unseen world, and Harry was suddenly wrenched back to the present. Pixie zoomed past him in a dazzling array of colors. He could tell his addiction had improved, but at that moment, the urge to dust was pulsating inside him. "Maybe another," he said. His companion disappeared, and a small furry mammal with huge antlers looked up at him. "Wow, with the way you handle your dust, it's hard to believe you were ever a pixie dust addict in the first place," she said.
Why are you flattering me?
"What's with you and that nonsense about let's save the kids from early? I have never met a single person in my life who talked that way. Even when I had been taken to see a Pixie candy bar employee who was put on the stuff, not a single person talked about the kids or that shit. Please don't patronize me. I don't want to hear any more about it." In what seemed like no time at all, Harry Potter and his companions returned to the beginning of his entry into the room, looking like a bunch of glow-stick zombies ready to collapse.
We don't really know who the companions are.
On his way out, the fuzzy mammal pulled him aside and said, "Before you leave, I should ask you how you haven't figured out how to control your pixie dust power." Harry, because someone's fancy robes and lack of taxes depending on a wizard not knowing and thus not teaching me a thing about pixie dust? Not to mention, but who do you think you are to judge me? How can you say that I had enough control over my pixie dust addiction without a warning, or even acknowledging that pixie dust was an addiction in the first place? Let's get down to business. Where's the product? I don't see you selling it to me. Talk shit, talk cash. The end. Reader. Damn, that's a tough pill to swallow. Yes, we may not understand the need to hide pixie dust's destructive qualities. Harry! Quiet, you! Reader. You heard me? Harry, you act like you never got stoned and got all meta before. Reader, get over yourself. Harry. It is so funny to see you talk. Listen to me. Tell me how not to fall off the wagon, and I'll think about believing you. In the meantime, hand over the pixie dust. Click, click, click. Harry took a shot of the entire cabinet of drugs in a blinding white light. Time, magic, and space seemed to exist inside the pixie dust instead of the outside world. He found himself teleporting from one part of the universe to another in different milliseconds.
This is only two. Only two universes, that's all. Okay. Last one for today. Is it done? Hold on, I forgot if I first finished it. Oh, no, yeah, we finished it. We're done with that, so, just stop this and start it again.